Chair Maggie Bockel has announced her intention to stand down from the board following the next meeting. I'll say something more at the next meeting, but just to recognise the huge amount of work that she's done for Nestrans over a very long period of time, and to thank her for her efforts there. And also just to welcome Paul, no longer as interim director, but now as director in his own right, following a successful appointment in two places now. Following a successful recruitment process, and I'm looking forward to working with Paul as we move forward. I'll quickly pass over just now for some housekeeping, so we are in somewhere new, so that may be a slight change as well.
Hi, it's Mark Massey. I'm just making sure that everybody on Teams is able to hear us. Can somebody just speak, please? A good sign.
Yep, can hear.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. This is a hybrid meeting. Therefore, we have some people joining us remotely via Microsoft Teams. Members of the board joining us remotely may wish to keep their camera on at all times, but switch their camera off until they wish to speak. All other remote participants should have their cameras and microphones switched off during the meeting unless they are speaking. All remote participants will be asked to speak at the appropriate time. I'll now ask Tricia to start the recording. Thank you.
Now we have the recording. Just move on to item 1.1, declarations of interest and transparency statements. Ian.
Thanks. Chair, it's 4.4. It's a transparency statement. I am a member of the board of NHS Grampian, and given that of NHS Grampian staff, I think to be that transparency statement.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other.
Sorry.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah, it's 6.1. Just give me a sec. The real matters update. Just it mentions the Stonhaven railway station, and an action for the director recommendation. Just I'm a ward councillor, but I'm applied the objective best. I'll stay in.
And Dawn was something very similar.
Very similar. So as above, a transparency statement that I am ward councillor for Stonhaven and Lower Deeside in respect of policy.
Thank you. No more hands. We'll move on to the minutes of the previous board meeting of 23rd of April. Do we have any questions on that? Are we happy to agree it? Great, thank you very much. Minutes of the Nestrans appointment committee. Are we happy to agree that? Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our presentation for the Elland area active travel from Aberdeenshire Council. If you want to take us through.
Certainly will. I'm going to hand over to my team, Chair, because they are very able to carry out that presentation. It'll be prayer on day for it.
You like us presenting?
Yeah, here at the front of it.
And it's because the cameras are up there.
Cameras are up there.
Yes.
I'll sit there, but they use different.
I said George.
Thanks for inviting us along today. Joanna and Sally, I'm going to be talking to you about the Island Integrated Travel Town and the work that's been concluded to date. So Elland is one of 5 integrated travel towns under the first round, the master plan of which was published in 2017. This is where we've focused investment and resources into particular towns to try and encourage and increase active travel. It's very much a community-led approach, so each of the master plans will be very different based on what the communities have desired. So it's about bringing infrastructure improvements, which I'll discuss, but equally important behaviour change, which Sally will be looking at. So this is sort of the aspirational routes that was published within the master plan document. And this is what the community have sort of said that they were looking for based on where they live and where they want to travel to. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking to you about these routes. So as you can see, sort of the dark red routes that you've got that, along the Riverside Road and up to the Academy. So they were put in place prior to the integrated travel time as part of the Green Campus that opened in 2015. So that's right. So as part of this project, we wanted to extend that Riverside where it says number 1, and that path brings you through Gordon Park and then along to Maudley Place, linking into the Martin Buckle Way, and that was one of the first routes that was completed. If you look at the green area, which is sort of number 2 there, and that was an aspiration to link in the Martin Buchan Way onto Hospital Road and then through Donald Park and over Golf Road. So some of which has been completed. We've put in the ramp at Hospital Road that links onto the Martin Buchan Way and Golf Road crossing, and this also been completed early this year. There's plans still to do McDonald Park. There are some paths that already exist there, but we are looking to upgrade those. That's not being taken forward yet. And then the area by Midwood Road by Octorell Primary, that was proposed as a school street scheme, which looks like closing the road at peak periods of the time. But the school were not in favour for that, so that would be progressive. Then looking at number 3, the blue areas. So there was an aspiration to link the north of Ellen, and these were 2 potential routes. But in the end, with detailed consultation, we actually went for another route, which is called Caroline's Wells route, which links into the back of the old academy where housing is at the moment, and that's been completed. There's also an extension to that which links past the doctor's surgery and down into Deer Valley. We then have the Martin and Bucket Way, which has been resurfaced. That's number 7, the purple route, with bollards being changed as well. Number 5, you're looking at Craig's Road there, and number 6, Riverside Road. They're under the same sort of issue that they're unfeasible to deliver. However, there have crossings that will be put in place. Actually, Riverside Road, the crossing's already in. And Craig's Road is not in yet, and that will also fall under the 20-mile-per-hour scheme. So that's those particular routes. So here are the 5 routes that I just mentioned that have been complete to date. So the Riverside path came in about 250k, and that's got average daily users of about 450. Caroline Wells Woods, 220k, and we're going to do some monitoring for that this year. The Martin Buchan Way resurfacing, 120k, average daily users of 282. The Martin Buchan Way access ramp, 120k. That was already quite a popular route, so we've got stats plan of around 400. And then the Golf Road crossing, 110k, and we're going to do some monitoring on that this year. So I'm just going to now show you some photos of some of these routes. So this is the Riverside path, the one in the middle by the bridge, that was the existing path that was put in place to the academy, and then the one on the far left, that's going to Gordon Park, and then these 2 other photos are showing where it ends on Maudley Place. This is Caroline Wells Woods, so the one on the top left, that's what the path looked like before, so it's a path through the woods, and then these other 2 photos are showing what the path is now. The Martin and Buchan Way, so the one on the far right, that's what the path looked like heading out towards the station before the resurfacing, and then the one underneath that is this looking at the same direction, the resurface. The one in the middle is showing where there used to be kind of a gate behind there, that's been removed, and these new bollards have been put in place. This then links down to Station Road where crossing has been put in, and then it continues on the other side of the road up along to Gaff. And then this is the ramp that links from that point down onto Hospital Road. So the one on the far left, that's what the ramp looked like before. So it's a bit steep ramp with some steps. And that's been removed, the path's been widened, and the ramp's now more of a kind of a bit graded. And these are some of the crossings. So the one on the left is the one on Riverside Road, and then this one in the middle is Golf Road. The pavement on either side of the road is also widened, so it links into McDonald Park and then through the new housing to Cowley Wells. And then there's some future schemes that have not yet progressed. So there's aspirations to have new Deer Park. So that's at design phase at the moment. And we're consulting with the trustees to progress that. So that will provide a cycle route along Castle Road down to the Riverside, up to the community campus, and McDonald Park as well. So there's a need to kind of decide on a new route that would avoid crossing the golf course there. And then we have some new strategic links. So Ellen, Balbrin, Newburgh and Aberdeen, and the Eiffin Trail, Ivy Mythic, Eiffin Bank Ellen. So these are various stages of design. So that kind of concludes the infrastructure that we've done to date, and it has been about kind of plugging those gaps and creating sort of a network of paths. I'm going to pass over to Sally now, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the behaviour change projects that we've delivered.
Yeah, so as well as constructing paths, we aim to encourage walking and cycling through our marketing and promotion. So we ran multiple marketing campaigns in cinemas, radio, bus panels, and you can see our stats for the STV campaign we ran reached almost 400,000 people, which was amazing. And we had great slots on TV as well, and that's one of our bus adverts. We try and coordinate all of our activities so that they all link up. So in our ITT towns, we would focus like the iBike project, the Aberdeenshire Coffee, which I'll talk about later, and all of our projects we try and focus on one place to get most of the benefit. And we've also ran a big event in Ellen a few years ago in Gordon Park, and that was quite successful as well. We've created loads of marketing materials, so you can see our treasure trails, and we've got education packs which link to the curriculum of excellence. We've got maps, workplace travel guides, and loads of different things, and they all go under the same branding, and so they're quite identifiable as well. So the Aberdeenshire Bothy was run by Cycling UK, and you can see the stats of all the activities they run, and that's specifically in Ellen. They do weekly lead rides in Ellen as well, and they are gaining so much popularity. They have got 1,800 Facebook followers at the moment, so the project's doing really well, and it's really good. And you can see some of the little photos of them where they're taking people out on their bikes. The maps and treasure trails is a huge project. We've got 23 walking mats and 15 treasure trails for all our different towns. And I couldn't really believe that we'd printed almost 30,000 maps and 8,000 treasure trails since 2018 when they were launched. So that was really good. And you can see the library did a display because we've been working quite closely with them, and on the left, Western Library put that together. The Val Trail, which is in Ellen, you might have heard of, follows a Viking, and there's sustainability links within it. You go around and you scan a little QR code and it pops up with a video, so you can see Val on the right with his cow. So that's quite good. And then the bit in the middle is our treasure trails, and it shows an example of our pin badges that you get when you complete them. And there's a comment from someone that really enjoyed their day out completing the treasure trails, and that's what we like to see. Love to Ride is a cycle challenge website that we work in partnership with City Council. They run annual challenges, including Cycle September, Bike Month, which just happened in May. We had 800 people register to that, which was amazing. And there's a really good split gender as well. And this year we decided to do the heat mapping, which is where participants can rank all of the routes that they do. So you can see on the map, there's 2 that are ranked green in Ellen. So that's ranked quite good, and there's a little orange bit that links onto the main road into Ellen, so that makes sense. But we can go in and see what comments are. This only started in April, so we'll get further comments over the year, I imagine, when people start participating in that. The e-bike hire scheme, and you can see the stats from the bookings. We've got 4 e-bikes located at the community campus in Ellen and along the F&B Way. You just use an app to book it, and you can book it for up to a day. And it's got everything you need, and that's been a really great project to get people trying e-bikes. And then for the monitoring, it's really important to monitor all of the activities we do, and all of our infrastructure, making sure we're putting infrastructure in the right places. So we have cycle counters across Aberdeenshire, but we also have mobile counters that we can place when required if we construct a new path and to see the usage. And this year we have purchased mobile network data, which uses GPS to track how people are traveling. And that'll give us a modal breakdown as well. So it'll be really interesting. We're hoping to get that up and running in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be able to use that to monitor places that don't have cycle counters. We've got the hands up surveys that run in schools. We've got Love to Ride heat mapping, which I talked about, and we also run a lot of online surveys on path development as well. And you can see at the bottom that's taken from the mobile network data. So that shows on average, it focuses just on September 24, 1 month of data, but there's quite a lot of active journeys. And then I've got hands up survey data as well. And then that's it. But we've also got a little thing of about, but I don't think it's going to work. But we can share the presentation if you want to have a look at the slides and the data, and you can have a little watch of the video if you want.
Thank you very much. Sally, superb. Wonderful.
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions from Sandra?
No, thanks very much for the presentation, and we did get a taster session when we were out today. I would say, however, that it's never reached me. Now, I might be the only one in the room that it hasn't reached, but because I have seen quite a lot to get about, but I haven't seen anything Ellen specific. So that was interesting. But my real question was, what are the other towns that are in the scheme as well? You mentioned there were 5. So just any comment on that as well?
We've got Inverurie, Portlandon, Huntly, and Fraserburgh in the round 1, and then we're going to be focusing on ITT2s, which are
Curra, Macduff, Banff, West Hill, Mintlot, and Stonehaven. And work's only just started on them.
So they're still at kind of the consultation stage.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Isabel, could you?
Yeah, thanks very much. And thanks very much for that. The Ellen Travel Town stuff has not been without its criticisms, to say the least. However, I think we've more or less got through it. As local councillors, we have had a tough time with some of this stuff, and quite the recent stuff too. However, we know that we'll get there in the end, and we do appreciate everything that's been done. Sometimes it's quite hard. For a completely brutal question, when is the pedestrian crossing going in on Craig's Road?
Thank you. Put me on the spot. Next time I'm going to take this one offline and come back here, because it's been requested by our projects team. We had a catch-up meeting last week about how they are prioritising the design of the schemes this year. So they are looking at pedestrian crossings early, but how they're going to phase the construction, I don't know at this stage.
Thank you very much. And the school project, you spoke about at the time when the school decided that they didn't want the parking project at their school. You were going to look for a different school to do that in. You've never managed to do that?
Not for Martin, no. No, we've not identified any best for Martin.
That's a bit of a shame. And I think it's really good. Some of these things have kind of faded a little bit from, they're not quite so well publicised at the moment as they have been in the past. But as the summer's coming, I think that we could do a bit more, and I can certainly do a bit about that as well locally. So that's fine. But I think it is really good. But my other issue about Travel Town and all the new paths that are going in, I think they're all fantastic. but future maintenance is always a concern. And that's everything from maintaining the path surface, but also overgrowing vegetation, which in Ellen, you know, a lot of these paths are through quite heavily treed and bushy areas, and we really struggle to maintain the paths and keep the vegetation off them, and that includes the railway line as well, which I think is getting a new group to help, a voluntary group to help maintain it, which is great. But I just would like to see some sort of future planning for maintenance incorporated into all the plans that happen across the whole, you know, Nestrans area. It's not just for Ellen. There isn't any future maintenance funding, as far as I understand, across any of it. And I think that's a real problem waiting for the future.
George, do you want to?
Thanks, Joe. No, I think it's a really interesting project. It was really good seeing some of the work that's been done at first hand. It really sort of you know, brings it to life. Question was really related to data and monitoring, which is all really critical and important, so that we can actually demonstrate the changes. And I noticed you were using mobile phone GPS data monitoring. Do you actually buy in that data from an external source?
Yeah, so Nestrans are funding the purchase. It's from Amy that we're getting the mobile data, and they use like an AI to process it, and there's millions of rows, so it's a massive data set. But yeah, we're hoping to get a dashboard and be able to play about with the data and see what it looks like.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Martin, yep.
Just an important distinction, it's mobile network data we're getting, it's not mobile phone data, and it's probably just a slight distinction to make. I think we're just wanting to make sure that people realise we're not just spying on them.
That's completely anonymous data.
Yeah, it only goes down to like or upscales it to 5 as a minimum, so you can't tell when people are traveling from. So it's
See any other hands?
Just.
Yes, I you go. Yes.
I was just going to ask, have you got funding in place for the next, you know, for the 4 other travel towns and the tranches? Have you got that secured, or is it something that you will be looking for?
I don't actually know if Sally, do you know?
Yeah, so we have funding secured for the development phase just now.
Yeah.
And then as those become feasibility, they become funding bits for the future. We have allocation that's grant award each year for the active travel tier 1, so we go off that, and there's other funding sources we can apply for. So we have a reasonable knowledge of what's coming down each year or two.
Excellent, thank you for that.
Yeah, maybe put it in a little bit of context. How long have you been working on the project here for Ellen? In terms of, you know, you put down a lot of projects and roads that you'd actually built.
it was 2018, wasn't it? The master plans were published for the first ITTs.
Yeah.
For that, it gets the master plans as well.
So the master plan came live in 2018, which is when you started feasibility work. And I guess we lost a year or two in the middle of that, around about 2020, fairly obvious reasons now. So we've gained some traction again since then, and we're now seeing construction happening across the 5 towns, which is good.
So the 1.2 million that has been spent on the main projects that were outlined in the presentation, that's been over the course of 8 years, effectively. Okay, helpful. Thanks, Alan.
Quick last scan. So, thank you very much for the presentation. Having had the chance to go out and see it, it was very welcome to see the overarching vision and how it's been delivered and how it's benefiting Ellen. So thank you very much, and I'll move on now. And move on to item 3.1, which is the unaudited annual accounts, and Dina will be taking us through that online.
Thank you, Chair. The board is asked to consider the unaudited annual accounts for the financial year 24-25. Local authorities and similar bodies are required to ensure that they demonstrate proper stewardship of their financial affairs. And the accounts in Appendix 1 are prepared in accordance with the Code of Practice for Local Authority Accounting in the UK 24-25 and presented in the format that follows International Financial reporting standards. Appendix 2 is a summary of the income and expenditure for 24-25, showing an operating deficit of just over 1 million, which is the amount to be drawn down from reserves to cover the planned use of funds for the progression of projects from 23-24. The total usable reserves in the balance sheet after funding the deficit is just over 3 million, and some of this is earmarked and approved by the board already to fund projects not completed in 24-25. This currently leaves 1.6 million classed as available to fund and support future projects. The board are asked to consider the management commentary and annual governance statement sections of the draft accounts, which includes a brief description of the financial performance of the partnership over the period. And the requests for final continuation of funding are presented in Appendix 3. There are 3 recommendations for the board: to consider the unaudited annual accounts for 24-25 and approve their issue to the external auditor and the controller of audit as per Appendix 1. Note the budget monitoring statement as per Appendix 2, and approve the final continuation of funding for 24-25 as per Appendix 3. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And do we have any questions? I don't see any hands, so can we take that? We take the recommendations as agreed. Thank you very much. We'll move on now to 3.2 budget matters. And Jenny, can you take us through those, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. This is a usual budget report to provide the board with an update on budget monitoring for the current financial year. Now received an offer of grant from the Scottish Government that has been maintained at previous year's levels. Summary statement of income and expenditure is given in Appendix 1, and this shows spend of 274,000 to the end of May, but it is early in the financial year and forecasts currently remain at budgeted level. Revised budget totals are shown should the adjustments to carry forward have been approved in the previous report. Appendix 2 shows the spend to end of May for the People in Place programme. This includes the 24-25 grant that was claimed in advance for projects associated with school academic term. Final amounts that were claimed against the 24-25 grant are set out in the report, and nearly the entire available grant amount of almost 1.8 million was used, with only a very slight underspend against the capital grant at just under £2,000. It's also noted that the Cairngorms National Park Authority has offered a grant of up to £15,000 to contribute to the detailed design and outline business case for a mobility hub in Balter. This work has been commissioned by Nestrans, is being funded through Aberdeen City Region deal strategic transport appraisal monies. The board has been asked to note the funding award to Nestrans from the Scottish Government that's been confirmed for 25-26. Note the monitoring position and forecast presented in Appendix 1. Note the monitoring position and forecast for the 25-26 People in Place projects in Appendix 2. Note the final amount claimed against the 24-25 People in Place grant award. And note the grant funded contribution to the Balster Mobility Hub project awarded by the Cairngorms National Park Authority. Thank you, Chair, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you much. And do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands to line or in the room. In that case, are we happy to agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you very much. Item 3.3, procurement use of frameworks. We'll take that as read and ask if anyone has any questions. And in lieu of any questions, can we agree? Thank you very much. Item 4.1 is the director's report, and I'll pass on to our new permanent director, Paul.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've taken the opportunity just to rejig the format of this report, so I'm happy to receive any feedback on this going forward. Basically, I just wanted to highlight some areas of strategic liaison, particularly with Transport Scotland, the recent RTP Leads and Chairs meeting we had, interaction with Scots, the professional body for transport professionals, and the work we're doing with community planning both in the city and the Shire, and references to Health and Transport Action Plan, the Bus Alliance and Road Safety North East Scotland. At the previous board, we presented the business plan for 25-26, and I was asked to go and think about some particular objective measurements of performance around that. I've proposed in paragraph 3.2 4 broad areas where I think that we should be considering our performance over the year and reflecting on that. Previously, we've looked at monitoring in terms of how the transport network has achieved, but I think we need to focus on actually how Nestrans per se has achieved. So 4 areas there around external funding, budget performance, progression of key projects, and the contribution on Nestrans' contribution to policy and partnerships both nationally and regionally. They are there in highlight form. If you're happy to approve them, I can further develop them, or perhaps we can discuss them further as we come to item 4, which is proposal for a board workshop, which I'd like to hold with the board after recess, but early in August, because that gives us a chance with the appointment of myself and the chair, and also with a couple of years to go of the Nestrans term, just to reflect on what we need to achieve and are there any things that we can reflect on or improve upon during that remaining period. And that could also include how we do things such as the board itself for some of these other metrics. So I'd like to propose that. And then finally, I've just highlighted as an appendix conferences, seminars and presentations, which used to be a Tail and Charlie report, but I thought it's more appropriate to build it into this report. There's 4 recommendations there about noting progress on liaison with our RTPs, approve the appropriate updates to the business plan proposals for a board workshop in August, and note in the current programme of conference attendance and presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any questions? John.
I guess for me, the relationship between us and Transport Scotland is always quite a bit of an up and down or here and there relationship. But would it be worth, Paul, asking Transport Scotland to come along to that August meeting? Because I think I think that would be incredibly helpful just to keep that relationship going, and for a Transport Scotland officer that's aligned to us to come and hear firsthand from members, would just be a suggestion that I thought might be helpful. I'm aware as well that coming from a strategic point of view, going towards a Scottish Parliament election next year, there may well be issues that Nestrans, not with a party political, but with a political hat on, would want any of the parties that are putting forward candidates next year to know what our priorities are, and that might be something that can be drawn out as well at that August workshop. So it's just a couple of ideas when I was reading through about that I thought would be worth considering. Don't need a particular answer today, but it would be worth having that chat with Michael, maybe offline, and really making it worthwhile to come along and have a workshop that will have some outcomes from it.
But my reaction to that is yes, but there might be some discussions we want to have internally without Transport Scotland there as well, and we might also then want to have that honest and frank conversation amongst ourselves without them being in the room. Perhaps then it might be more appropriate then to have that conversation with them in the room at that particular point. But I take the point. It's a good suggestion. Perhaps that's something we can reflect upon around it. But yes, we are maintaining good relationships with Transport Scotland at an officer level in terms of the communications. But again, sometimes that doesn't always translate into positive action and decisions for the North East, which is what we would like to see.
Thank you. And do we have any other questions? There's anyone online either? Are we happy to agree the report and its recommendations? Thank you very much. I'll move on to 4.2. I did mention at the start of the meeting about the things that should be standing down. I've then heard afterwards that cameras started afterwards. So just to not to repeat myself in full, but just to thank Maggie and Public Records for all the work she's done for Nestrans over a number of years, and to say how greatly appreciated it is. And again, I'll comment more fully at the next meeting, which will be her last. Paul, do you want to?
Yes, again, thank you very much, Michael, and again, thank you very much, Maggie, for the timely indication of your notification as well. 19 years of contribution to Nestrans, that's wonderful, and truly appreciated from all the officers as much as the politicians. So thank you very much for that. The board, the paper before us sets out the practical mechanisms for the appointment of a replacement for Maggie, if that is possible, dare I say. And a lot of this is drawn from the legislation that was around in terms of the setting up of RTPs, in terms of the orders and establishment, in terms of what the attributes of suggested we might be looking for, the requirement for an appointments committee, an application process, a recruitment timetable. And also we reflect there that we would also have to replace Maggie as a vice chair of the board. But my proposal is that's something we can deal with in November when we have the new person in place. So the recommendation of the paper is to note the intention to resign following the September board meeting, agree to recruit a replacement for Maggie, and then agree the proposals for the recruitment. Sorry, appoint a councillor from each of Aberdeen City Council and Aberdeen Shire Council to sit with the chair, vice chair on the appointments subcommittee, as well as a non-councillor board member. So we have that 5-seated appointments committee, and then again the recommendation to seat the vice chair in November. So those are recommendations.
Thank you. And just quickly checking, we need to agree the additional councillors at this meeting. Are we minded to do the same as the previous appointments panel, to have opposition councillors from each of the member authorities? And Ian, are you happy to? Are we happy to appoint Ian to the appointment panel again? Or
Delighted if Sandra did it. I mean that because she's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And we have Ian Ross. So just to clarify between Ian's, apologies.
And we're sitting together as well.
Are we happy to agree then, chair, vice chair, Sandra, Ian Ross, and Don as the appointments panel for this?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously Colin as well. You know, if Colin wanted to do it instead of Ian, but I mean that we can get on a bike and see who gets. Chair, I was going to just make the point. I mean, you know, we can come to that agreement. I wanted to make the point, and I'm not going to say too much about Maggie at the moment because I'm sure we will have plenty of time to say more. But we need to look at the diversity of our board and make sure, with our external members as well, that we take that into account. So it was, but we also need to, you know, have a process that the outline is there, which I'm in favour of. But we do need to go out and far and wide and just make sure that we sell ourselves as a good organisation for people to come on board and take part in, and make the point as well that you know, that you can make a difference when you come on this board. So I think that's important, because people giving up their time to do this as non-elected members is a big deal. I've been on both sides, so I know, and so yeah.
I agree with all. I agree with all of that. Just a clarification, so I understand Ian and Colin will speak to each other to agree on who will be who will be the non-councillor member on the appointment panel. So delegates that's appropriate. And Isabel, see, you put your hand up.
I do. I just wondered how the post was advertised, and will the board members be circulated with the advert? Because I do have some folks that would be interested in it. Like think would be interesting.
I think that for the appointments panel, there's three main tasks. Officers will prepare the advertising material and the package, but we will put that past the appointments panel just so they're aware of that. The second one will be a short meeting as well to look at the applicants and have that. And then there's a third stage, which is what we call in here. It's not quite interview, but it's also informal discussions with the appointments panel about what they feel they can contribute to the role and whether they understand that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It was really, how is it publicised? How is it advertised?
It will be publicised in the press and through social media and our websites. And then we will share it around.
And can the board be circulated with it?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Not seeing any hands up line or in the room? Are we happy to agree that delegating the authority to the external members to appoint between themselves and the council members being as discussed? We're happy with it? Do you agree? Great, thank you very much. Now moving on to 4.3, the risk register. I'm hoping to take that as read and just go straight to questions if anyone has anything they wish to ask about that.
More of a comment, I suppose. I always think risk registers are good on a committee to read, because it can give you a snapshot of what the salient issues are. So I was pleased to see it and well updated, I thought, and yeah, so well done would be my only comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. And do we have anything else? Not seeing any other hands, so we're happy to take that. Are we happy to agree that paper? Great. Thank you very much. And the Health and Transport Action Plan update, again, I'm hoping to take that as read and to ask the questions. Can we agree? Yep. Thank you very much. Item 5.1 is the Aberdeen Rapid Transit Strategic Business Case, and I'll pass on to Kirsty to take us through that paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this paper presents the strategic business case for Aberdeen Transit. The work has been undertaken by Stantec and presents the case for investment in a bus rapid transit system for the North East. It appraises a range of options for the delivery of the objectives, and then it sets out in the sort of business case template the sort of strategic, economic, financial, commercial and management aspects of the project that will be developed further as we move into the next stages. The report seeks the endorsement of the progression of options 5 and 5A through to our programme level outline business case, with those options very much retaining the overarching vision of Aberdeen Rapid Transit as a step change improvement in public transport provision. It sets out options and seeks endorsement on the proposed approach to the consideration of active travel, more specifically cycling provision alongside the development of ART infrastructure. Sets out cost implications in relation to those different approaches. The strategic business case and the recommendations within it have been considered and endorsed by both Aberdeen City Council's Net Zero Environment and Transport Committee and Aberdeenshire Council's Infrastructure Services Committee over the last 2 weeks. And those recommendations have been endorsed. So today we're seeking Nestrans endorsement to progress on the basis of the approaches that have been set out in the report. We also set out a brief summary of the activity that's been undertaken in relation to the communications and engagement work stream. Really fundamental part of progressing the project is how we're engaging with stakeholders, how we're planning to engage with the public. We've got Consultant Streets UK supporting us with that work. We've done a lot of stakeholder engagement, but where the intention really is now to undertake more public engagement at the autumn. So it's just outlining some of the proposals around that. The report also sets out just a brief summary of the procurement strategy going forward. The project to this point has been commissioned through Nestrans, but the proposal as we move from strategic business case into outline business case would be for the City Council to take the lead on that on behalf of the Bus Alliance partners. So the recommendations really, that's a very brief summary. I'm happy to take any questions. Very much endorsing the strategic business case to move to the next key milestone.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions at all? Sandra?
Yeah, it was just, I mean, there was a lot in the press, Kirsty, about about art and how it fits in and so on. And I do think we still have a big comms job in which to get the message out there that this is not just going to be good for Aberdeen City, which I believe it is, but it is going to be good for Aberdeenshire too. And I think that's always been the thinking behind it, certainly from the early days. And I was struck when we were at the park and ride today how that connectivity between the towns north of Ellen, who can make use in different ways of the park and ride, whether it's to leave cars there and then cars share into town, or to come from the Broch or Head or anywhere in between, and then park and get on a bus, and that sort of thinking when it comes to that, or where bus and train come together. And my view, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my view is that they can both work, that there is no reason to think in terms of the timelines. I mean, we've been talking art since before COVID, and it's taken this long to get to where we are. We've got the work going on in the stations, and the timelines are not coming together in such a way that they will crash into each other. There is room and there is an opportunity, I think, for both. Would that be your analysis of what's in front of us today?
Yeah, I think so. So the Aberdeen Rapid Transit, as you know, came forward as part of the regional transport strategy. So very much as our flagship project, not integrated as part of the region's transport strategy, which includes rail. I think ART is about providing choice within that transport network, obviously integrating it with rail services, with the wider bus network. That's a really, really key part. And as we've gone through the strategic business case, that's really come through, is how do we deliver art and how do we improve the wider bus network as a part of that in terms of integration. And I think the same is true for rail. I think the two can serve very different markets, I suppose, in terms of the sort of the strategic connections. With rail is really important for those longer distance journeys. It's really important for access to the city centre, but Aberdeen Rapid Transit, in complementing that, can provide then those on-road connections or connections to destinations that are not within the city centre, and how it interacts with, the routing at the moment specifically takes it down that sort of Guild Street interchange, very much in terms of integration with the rail station and providing those on-road connections. So I think very much it's part of a package of transport improvements for the region, but it does need to be integrated. It needs to be integrated with bus and rail services. I don't see a conflict. I see them as part of a choice, enabling choice, and trying to deliver that step change, that step change in mode shift that the RTS is all about. It's that 50-50 mode split between sustainable transport modes.
And I guess without hogging, I think the getting the forgotten his name actually, the glider man over to Woodhill House the other day. I mean, I don't know if there is any way that we can use, or I don't think there was a video taken of that. I'm not sure if there was, but that was such a good door into what is really at the hub, because for those of us that went to Belfast and are on board, so to speak, it's a little bit easier. But for those who are still need the case to be made, I think that is helpful. And personally, just traveling around and being in other cities, even this summer, and seeing how integrated travel works, I think it's not just about one mode. It's the bikes, and let's be honest, in Aberdeenshire, it's going to be the car as well. The car will not go away in Aberdeenshire. But for the city, we do need, if we're going to try and reduce car usage across the whole country, it's the cities are going to have to, in my opinion, have that much bigger behavioural change and move around more differently in 5, 10, 20 years time than we are at the moment, for the sake of our planets and our those that are behind us. So yeah, I'm on board.
Just in response, we didn't get a video unfortunately of that presentation, just we had some technical challenges. We tried to do it in advance, but it just unfortunately didn't work. But the glider is a really great example, and we've learned an awful lot from that, and we've learned a lot from Robin, who's been incredibly helpful. I think we can continue to do that. We are also looking at other schemes, you know, other cities that are doing this, because you know it's not just Belfast and Liverpool. We're looking at, you know, they've actually even had a glider bus over to Liverpool to sort of see the benefits of those. So Liverpool, Birmingham, Sprint, Portsmouth are doing a lot in terms of enhanced partnerships, work with their bus operators. So I think maybe as we move forward into the outline business case, there's maybe an opportunity to broaden that out and do maybe learn a bit more from some of, we've already spoken to a number of them as part of the strategic business case, but there's perhaps more we could do in terms of seeing what they're doing, visiting.
I've got 4 hands here. I've got Isabel, George, Colin, Ian, Ross.
George first.
Sorry, apologies, I saw Isabel first on the screen, but I'll go for yes. I'll go for George and then to yourself.
All right, thanks, Joe. Yeah, 2 points.
We're very conditioned for our hands up.
I think Sandra's quite right. I think the public engagement on this is going to be crucial, and just a wee question on that, because we need to take the public with us, because the public have not been brought into a lot of transport interventions of late, and it's catastrophic really for further down the line. Then you get reputational damage and all sorts. So I think that's a crucial part of the next phase that needs to take place, because I don't think a lot of the public are fully aware either. So that needs to be there. The second point is about funding. What's the feedback? What's the time scale and realistic delivery of funding? So that's a basic question. So I'll
take the comms one first.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you've said. I think it's absolutely, if you look at what we you know, the risk register that we have, an awful lot of those risks around public perception, public attitudes to bus priority, public attitudes to public transport. So yes, I think early engagement, I think taking people along, awareness raising. And I think one of the ambitions of ART is to provide this step change improvement that makes some of those infrastructure measures more acceptable. So consultation is key. We're proposing to do an engagement in the autumn, very much on this is what we have done through the strategic business case. So a reflection on that, but also looking forward in terms of gaining public's input into what's your views on things like vehicles, what's important to you in terms of some of the key features. So we'll be working to do that. And I think one of the reasons we've got Streets UK on board is to provide that ongoing support commitment. So it's not just a 6-week consultation, it's an ongoing engagement and exercise, and awareness raising is absolutely important.
And maybe mitigation, so traffic movement, because obviously, you know, parking, walkers, these are the things that completely derailed proposals in the past, because the mitigations have not been good. That's part. That's
no, I agree. And in terms of funding, we have got so as you probably know, the project was funded under Transport Scotland's Bus Partnership Fund. We received the Bus Alliance was successful in its bid to that. That very much kick-started the options appraisal and the staff appraisal work for Aberdeen Rapid Transit and the 4 multimodal corridor studies that have now been subsumed within that project. That was paused at the end of 2 years ago. Yeah, that funding was paused, and at that point we managed to secure funding through the City Region deal. We received 1.74 million for 3 years to undertake business case development work. So we've got funding until the end of March 27 to undertake the business case development, and we're really hoping to progress that outline business case. So by the end of that period, we have that programme level in BC, which will then assist us in going to the likes of Transport Scotland and submitting for that funding package for the delivery aspects. But I would say as well that Transport Scotland are very much involved in the project. They are now just in the process of they're now going to be sitting on the ART programme board as in a project assurance, project advisory role. So they are very much involved in that, in the project. You know, it's in their strategic transport projects review, it's in national reform. So we're very much going to keep them on board and helping to sort of steer the project as it goes forward, because the intention is that we're looking to bid for that external funding. We move forward.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think that getting the Shire signed up to this might be quite a difficult job, and there's quite a perception that there's less need to travel into the city now. I don't know what the figures are for travelling. I mean, I suppose I could find them relatively easily. But since COVID and changes to city centre, I don't really know what the change has been in the amount of people travelling. And I think there's still an awful lot of people still work in the city and travel there. And some of them do travel from Fraserburgh in the bus every day, which is quite remarkable, really. But certainly for a corridor like this, where there isn't a train anymore, that there is still hopes that will come back. But at the moment, there's not a train. And people have got so used to using their cars for speed and convenience, and the number of rural routes is reduced, and the reliability of the buses right now isn't that great. So more and more people are moving away from the car. So I think it's a long haul to get that change. I don't think it's impossible, but I think that it would take a long time, and I maybe wouldn't be optimistic about it either necessarily, because it's just such a big change for people from jumping in the car from home to get to the city. But I guess, you know, if things do change and there's other things like workplace parking levies, or, you know, the cost and the speed of alternatives could make a big difference. But it has to be an attractive option.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you ask people why they don't use the bus, reliability comes out pretty much on top. That's one of the major factors. If it's not reliable, it's not an attractive option.
Sharing social media, if there's a bus not turned up, everybody knows it's
yes, and that's what picks up. Probably it doesn't matter that 80% of them do turn up on time. It's that 20% that
it should be. 80's maybe not enough. So
no, it's not. I think I think really the target's 95% of it should be turning up in that time period. But I think reliability is key, and journey times are key. It does have to be an attractive journey time. It does have to be competitive to the car. You know, and that's what ART actually really aims to achieve. It really aims to deliver the bus priority that enables those journey times to be faster and more reliable. I think we've always also said as well that it's about choice. So we're not expecting everybody to use public transport for every single journey that they're making, but there will be journeys that make sense to be used by public transport. You know, the likes of the hospital, very, very constrained parking, very difficult to access. But public transport accessibility to Forester Hill drops off markedly within a very short distance of time. If you're travelling from West Hill, for example, that's it's about 60 minutes longer, I think, to come in by public transport. So if you can improve those connections and you can improve the reliability, I think there's a really good chance of being able to kind of to deliver that whole shift. But reliability is key, and that's why the bus priority is fundamental to delivering that.
I've got Colin next, then I've got Ian, then I've got Alan. So Colin.
Sorry, I haven't been to the other ART meetings. I've been away, but so this may have been you already answered somewhere. But table 2 on page 131, the table there, the cycling part of it, the bottom 2 options are pushing cycling away from the main route, which, like, first thing I notice is that's not enough higher travel for a start. But then the bits in brackets says not costed as part of this business case. So are we actually looking at comparing apples with apples? Because you've got a fully segregated cycle provision at 323 million, and then part of it is not costed at 205 million. So if you are putting in those alternative routes, they should be costed into this so that you have you're looking at like for like on that.
Yeah, so in a way, the costs that are presented in this are a sort of legacy of how the project has come forward. So we had 4 multimodal corridor studies that looked at what can you achieve, the sort of the sort of fully segregated cycle provision, fully all of the bus priority, and all of those infrastructure options have come forward into ART, and that's what's being costed. And that 323 million is the absolute upper end of that fully segregated cycling provision, full bus priority, and what that entails is significant junction modifications and significant, and there's some really significant infrastructure that's all included within that cost. At the other end of the scale, they did provide a cost for it if as you're progressing the business case, all you did was bus priority. I think actually what we've recommended as part of the paper that went to the net zero committee, there's 3 broad approaches to how you consider active travel. And what we're trying to do is just frame that so that the outlook business case can be clear on how we're considering that. Now, active travel is absolutely part of the design process and the objectives for ART because of, in terms of pedestrian links to bus stops and halts and how it links in with the wider pedestrian network, and then how it also links in with the wider cycling network. I think there will be a process of value engineering as you go forwards in terms of where that space will constrain what you're able to deliver. And what the approach is saying is yes, we're considering active travel provision, but it might not in all instances be able to still spaces. So when that is the case, we need to look at how that art network and how that cycle provision integrates into the wider network and those parallel walls for that space. So that will be part of the. So the costs present the sort of upper and lower ends, but I think the reality will be somewhere in the middle of that in terms of those costs and as those designs.
So basically what you're saying is that the bottom 2 ones, there's no provision for cycling in that. I mean, as you say, it's mainly delivered off alternatives, so you've stripped out the cycling costs out of those altogether. Because it looks, when you read it first, you think, oh, yeah, they're putting in some cycling outside the routes. So if you were cycling along the route, you go backwards and forwards to the other bits, but actually there's nothing in that stripping it out.
Yes, and actually what we've recommended is that's not the option that we progress. So we're not recommending that. We literally just consider bus priority alone. It has to be a package of bus priority and active travel. But if you take that to its full extent, it possibly becomes the costs become so much greater because of the significant junction improvements and railway crossings that you have to sort of negotiate. So the reality is somewhere probably that option at the bottom where active travel is not considered is not being.
Right, thank you.
You can certainly go into more detail on it.
Yeah, just trying to get my head around this.
Thank you, Ian.
Yes, I'm just picking up on this obvious difficulty of persuading the benefits outside Aberdeen City. That's going to be a hard job. Since the Belfast glider has been on the go for quite some time now, is there any chance of finding out how that has helped the hinterland as well as the city? That was the first one. The second one, Colin's pretty much asked what I was going to ask about costs that were or weren't in these figures. And the other was just a comment about the figures themselves. I think some of the adverse press recently has been about costs that people typically see public sector project going up, costs going up, running out of control, uncertainties that the eventual cost won't be whatever cost you say it is. What's the view about all that?
Yeah, so can you remind me that your first point was
About the benefits that have been made in Belfast, not just in the city.
Yeah, so Robin actually really touched on that quite a lot in his presentation, and they were delivering the Belfast glider. One of the first things they delivered was the park and ride facilities. So we've obviously got a number of those park and ride facilities, obviously, and we're proposing additional ones, but they started with their park and ride. And it's a different context. They're delivering it in a slightly different way, but those were the usage of those went up substantially. They were at capacity, within really early on in the implementation of glider. So they feel certainly that it's really benefited the people using the wider hinterland. The costs in terms of the presented cost range, and of course what's reported is the top end. I would just say that we're still in a, let's say, a strategic business case. So those costs are still high level. We've done quite a lot of work actually in terms of the sort of designs, probably more than you would maybe normally do at a strategic business case stage. But so those will progress forward, and the approaches that we're endorsing or taking forward from this case will help to refine those further. But I think that would be a normal procedural part of some business case. And should have written them down, sorry, your third point.
I'm just looking at the costs and, you know, nobody ever said what the cost of this project would be. Certainly there's not a direct comparison with Belfast, but I seem to remember Belfast had a tag of about 90 million, I think. And one of certainly the attractions for me when it was first talked about was that this was a project which was less likely to be mired in all the problems and the costs that get out of control, because it had a, not simple exactly, but a more straightforward context to it. It's just a question of keeping an eye on these costs, being realistic, because however good a project it is, and it undoubtedly is, the costs start getting out of control. It's going to be even more difficult to make a case for it. It's also going to be very bad in the public eye.
Yes, and I think probably what some of the other impacts on the costs are probably factors that are out with our control in terms of increases in construction price index, which have gone up. I think it was about 20% since we did the first round. So these things also impact on the costs. We've done quite a lot of work in terms of, you know, in terms of deliverability, looking at other schemes, and one of the reasons we've gone down that bus rapid transit route rather than a tram route is the cost and the deliverability and the feasibility aspect. That's a major part of that decision.
The great benefit of not having stuff on the ground.
Yes.
Where the big problems occur. But it still seems to be mushrooming a bit in terms of costs, and it's a question of keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, I just for context though, that, you know, Edinburgh, the extension of the Edinburgh tram network, I'm just trying to find it, you know, that was around 200 million for 4 kilometres, and we're looking at a network of around 50 kilometres. I'll just to put that context in terms of what other schemes are.
I've got Alan next, followed by Miranda, so Alan.
Yeah, I mean, I think the context for me a little bit is we are where we are today. Totally get what you're saying, Ian, in terms of, you know, future, etc. And it really comes down to what the scheme brings in terms of how we sell it, also the communication. It's absolutely vital, particularly in the I don't want to really pick anywhere within Aberdeenshire because there's so much of it is rural. But if I thought, for example, say Braemar, to get into the city, etc., it's your links there, you come all the way, maybe Banff, etc. I mean, it's the extreme. I went right down to the bottom of your ward, George, etc. Again, these are the challenges. Bus frequency, this thing I always think about. In the city, it's minutes we talk about them. Yeah, in the Shire, it's hour, you know, etc. So there is difference. That again, it's back to perception. But two main questions. The first one is in relation to your timeline, talking about March 27. So the first would be, so that would take it that you'd be maybe making a bid to Transport Scotland after that. Would that be you thinking like for the 28, 29 year, or could it be, you know, longer? Or that's the first one. The second one is noting that where we are today, and I'm wondering, just would there be an intention to bring back at some point between now and March 27 something to the board here by way of an update, and when that would actually be? Just out of curiosity.
Yes, so on the funding point, yes, March 2027 is the end of the City Region Deal funding allocation. So that's the sort of our end point in terms of the money that we've got to spend. I would say that we will be speaking to Transport Scotland from now, between now and then, about funding going forwards. I think the Bus Alliance as a whole is continually trying to make that case for multi-year funding. We've seen replacement of the Bus Partnership Fund with a Bus Infrastructure Fund, much more limited, 1-year capital fund. So I think that constant messaging around about we need multi-year funding for substantial bus improvements is a really key message. I don't think we'll be waiting until the end before we're sort of making that bid, but yes, we'll have to look. I think the reality probably is that it will be a funding package, and so that there are other avenues. And then, you know, if it does go down a partnership route, it's what can the bus operators bring to that, what can the private sector bring to that invest in the picture as well. So yes, and that's one of the reasons of, you know, working closely with Transport Scotland to keep that up there in terms of their radar. And I'm more than happy to come back with updates at any point between now and the completion of the outline business case. So a few really key parts to the outline business case that I think will be important. One of the first critical steps is a joint network review with the bus operators, and that very much is looking at how art could potentially integrate into that wider bus network, starting to talk a bit more about what the implications are for the wider bus network, how we deliver art in partnership. So I think that would be quite a useful thing to come back on at some point. But yes, we'll bring back updates as we move forward.
Just be able to put that as an additional recommendation. For thing to suit between yourself and Paul.
Yep.
Like,
I'm happy with that.
assuming everybody's
Forward to the rest of the board.
Yeah.
just suggestion. Thank you.
Linda?
Thanks. I guess the 323 million is a very big figure, and I just want to seek some reassurance that that is being considered in a phased approach as well. Of that is a big high level figure for delivering all of it, but there are opportunities to potentially phase it or find a different way of delivering it, which may bring the price down.
Yes, so that, as I said, that 322 million incorporates everything that you could potentially do in terms of delivering, and I should say the inclusion of specifically segregated cycling has implications for junctions. It has implications. There's a railway crossing at Powys across the railway. So in order to provide all of that in that space, you have to look at rewidening that bridge. So that cost is included, but I think as you progress the project and you start to look at that, you start to look at the value versus the benefit, you can kind of bring in some value engineering, and that cost I think would likely come down because there would be some decisions. So yes, that cost is the upper end, but I think there's a lot to go through looking at, as I say, a phased approach and what infrastructure you might bring on first.
Well, I mean, I was just looking back to February 21 when Joanna Murray brought a report to Aberdeen City Council, and at that time when we were really deciding, is this what we want to do? And the arguments were very much around, there was arguments about trams and all the rest of it. And the price tag at that time was 200 million. Now things have grown arms and legs in some cases, or engineering works have popped up that we weren't aware of before. Personally, I think, 4 years on, that even at that top end of 3.2, whatever it is not out with the realms of possibility and not out with what Aberdeen deserves out of the national strategic plan, frankly. Because there are, whilst we've been working up this project over these years, there are other projects that we don't want to see come leapfrogging over us and getting funding, and we kind of don't get the benefit of that, because it is part of that regional thinking that we put in place in Nestrans, and I think it is a key project in that. But there are plenty others that would be after that money if it was made available. I think you're absolutely right in taking up the point that Alan was making about the funding. The Scottish Government will need to look long before then about what they're going to do. We've got that before, and today there's going to be a Scottish Parliament coming up. They will need to have a look at their bus, whether it's this particular fund that I've had before or another fund, what they're going to do. But I'm absolutely sure that those purse strings will loosen a little as we get nearer to that particular election, and we have to be ready for that. And I think we are with this. I think there's a lot of work going on, but I do think we also need to, and I'm glad to hear about Transport Scotland being around the table and being involved, because we need to get their buy-in, and they need to see the problems that we're facing. But I also think we need to get the bus companies. The bus companies have a responsibility. The North East Bus Alliance is a really good start, but it has to grow and change with the times as well, and so we really need to get their buy-in and their input as well as the output that they're going to get out of it. So I think there's a lot more to be done, but it's still, I think, a good value for money project in terms of shifting that balance in a strategic way. And that's why I know it's number 13 in the SBTR2, and I did worry about that when I saw it, but I think it can still come good again, and it will be a project that A is deliverable, B, that we've shown that we're shovel ready to do it with all that work, all that investment and thought that went into those multi-modal corridor studies should not be lost in my view.
I agree with quite a bit of what's been said. I'll probably echo a few points as well. First, a few folk have mentioned comms, and I think there's a lot of good in this project to talk about, to talk up. And you can see not just in Belfast, but we've had a number of projects across England that now start to be developed. Following that, we have opportunity to be at the forefront of this, so we have the opportunity to, or we could well find ourselves a few years down the line following others anyway, because it becomes much more established across the rest of the country anyway. But there's a lot of good happening here. I'm quite more than happy to play my part in talking up to try and make the case for that. That's a wee comment about there's quite a few comments about what this delivers for Aberdeen. So it's kind of I'll follow on with a question on this as well. But in terms of Aberdeen Rapid Transit, one is it builds in that choice isn't just an individual choice, it also builds in resilience. It gives you different transport options, and that adds to the reliability of transport networks. And it makes the case for people coming out of their cars too. Admittedly, that's maybe a strong case for the city, but the benefit of that again is it frees up road space, whether that be for folk in Aberdeenshire, for folk in Aberdeen or city who live, and again, more difficult places to access or with disabilities, for whatever the reason, that they have more easy access with a car because of the access that potentially frees up to with that, and as well as make it easier for buses. Again, Aberdeen, your more rural buses. I understand a fair chunk of their journey time spent in the city centre in traffic effectively, rather than actually getting to and from communities. So just maybe a wee bit of comment about how, if there is the immediate, even where there's maybe an immediate upfront benefit to the city, that the consequences of that would be benefits further afield as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we're talking about a major reallocation of road space to public transport within the city, but that not just for Aberdeen Rapid Transit buses, that is for the benefit of the wider bus network. So thinking about the Fraserburgh Peterhead buses that come in, there's no expectation that everyone will have to get off those buses on one side. There's an interchange, there's a choice, but those buses will then better benefit from that, from more reliable journey timing within the city. And we know from all the work that's been done, historically how much some of those buses get caught up in congestion around Bridge Street, Guild Street, around the bus, accessing the bus station. So that's a really important part for people. It's nothing worse than sailing in and then spending the next sort of, the last mile of your journey caught in congestion. So there is benefits for that wider bus network. And yes, if you can substantially, if you can achieve that mode shift, that then also has benefits for those who do. It's traffic for freight as well, that's an important aspect of the region as well. Road network is an important part of the transport. It's just making sure that we've got the balance right in terms of the users and the quality aspects, and ensuring the effort.
I just follow myself and Paul got the express bus out from Aberdeen to Ellen today. Again, that's those express buses as well, although they won't be parked, etc. They'll have a lot of that infrastructure will potentially be available to them to be able to increase their transport times as well.
Yeah, so I think a really key part of the next stage is looking at how art interacts with it. But for those other buses that are coming in, that bus priority is not an exclusive use for art, it is for the wider.
Thank you very much. And just I have no questions. I've not checked out if there's any other thing else. Are we, with the addition of Alan's suggestion about further reports, further updates, are we happy to agree the report in front of us? Great. Thank you very much. Move on to the Aberdeen Towards multimodal study, and I'll pass on to Paul for that.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, I think actually those who are able to attend the seminar we had a few weeks ago, which was quite useful in terms of getting feedback and discussion on the paper that has been presented here. The history of this is that prior to COVID, about 2019, we submitted a bid for the local rail development fund, seeking some funding to look at the feasibility, etc., of local rail stations to the south of Aberdeen, and that followed on from some previous work we've done to the north of Aberdeen. Clearly, Transport Scotland had other ideas at that point in time, so there was a big discussion about how we would change the scope, how we'd look at the full corridor, how we would need to look at the larger strategic interventions on that corridor. COVID extended the timeline, and then some inaction in Transport Scotland further extended the timeline. And it wasn't really until Nestrans started funding the study ourselves that we're able to start making some good progress on this piece of work. Following the previous board decision in February 24, we took forward 5 packages for detailed appraisal following the STAG approach. That was looking at strategic active travel routes on the corridor, mobility hub or bus priority measures, bus priority on their own, a new station at Newton Hill, a new station at Cove. Following the work on the costings, the appraisal of benefits and impacts, feasibility, risks, etc., there are 4 or 5 packages to take forward. And because of the passing of time, many of these are now actually part of what we're doing in some areas anyway. Certainly in terms of strategic active travel, the work between Wellington Road and Mary Wells come forward has been positive, and that is currently part of funding package that we've secured for City Region Deal. Work is ongoing between Marywell and Newton Hill by Martin's team in Aberdeenshire Council, building on the success of the integrated travel town in Portlethen and making sure we get those linkages beyond that. The Regional Active Travel Network considered this route and did actually reflect on the prioritisation of that element prior to the subsequent prioritisation of routes to the south of Newton Hill and Muckles. The work that we've done looking at the A92 Stonehaven alignment came out as being more difficult and more costly than perhaps we'd anticipated. We believe there is a solution there, but we need to do more work on it. That may require future land acquisition, or just looking at different alternatives more than instead of the alternatives we look at. The difficulties of putting a 3 metre wide plus protection alongside the A92 became quite difficult to achieve and quite risky, particularly working with the Trunk Road Authority in that area. But we still have that desire to provide that solution. We have options to look at the mobility hub and bus priority, and that aspect now very much links into the Aberdeen Rapid Transit business case, which we've just heard about. And this is where those elements should be taken forward. We've also then looked at 2 local rail stations, at Newton Hill and at Cove. Newton Hill shows a benefit in terms of the costs and the economic time savings, but there are challenges there as well. And we had a really good discussion with the Community Council, which came into these challenges, such as parking, just the tightness of the station into the houses. And I think we need to do more work on are there solutions to overcome that in that instance. And indeed at Cove as well, good conversation with the Community Council, good positive interactions coming through the surveys. Good opportunity to link that to the energy transition zone and the work going on the coast road there. But the work showed that there could be a potential interface with the Aberdeen Rapid Transit. So the modelling didn't discriminate necessarily the different types of trips that people might be making, who uses it for what purpose in that area. And we do know that local rail stations do work successfully with local bus services, at Dice, at Portlethen, and some of these other examples. So it's not a no-go area. It's a case of let's look at this a bit more and understand what trips for what purposes and does it all make sense, because we're looking for that complementary transport network and not one which competes with itself. Clearly at the seminar that we had, the feedback we got was people in the Stonehaven Lawrencekirk say, well, what about us? The strategic interventions that you've identified have all come through the process and located at the north of the corridor. Noting that in the future, strategic interventions like at the Lawrence Kirk flyover and the Aberdeen to Central Belt rail improvements will deliver connectivity improvements. But clearly the message was, you know, we need to look at this area and we need to make sure that we are picking up on those strategic or those connectivity challenges, such as the bus services as well, desire for some of the active travel links as well, and long distance coach activity as well was something else that came through. There are opportunities to work with the place planning processes and the integrated travel town for Stonehaven, and we would like to include that in the recommendations to take forward. So the recommendations are to note and publish the reports. We want to formally consult the two councils on the work. Meantime, we want to address some of the questions that we've had from Transport Scotland on the development of the rail station, so not stand still on that area. We see that the active travel and the ART work is largely in hand, but we need to keep progressing that. And we've worked with Aberdeenshire Council, developed proposals for assessing options for the south of the corridor, including Stonehaven, Lawrence Kirk areas. Thank you very much. Take questions.
Thank you much. I've got George and I've got Dodge. I'll back to George first.
Thank you. Yeah, just being parochial, obviously, the area south of Stonehaven would feel very left out of this process. So if it stays, Lawrence Kirk really needs to involve like St Mary's Community Council. We've got quite a number of community councils down there, actually just off the spine, A90 as well, who would have a view on it. Certainly, Mary's Community Council are aware of this, but felt it's been left out of it. So that would be a bit of feedback from them. So they would like to be encouraged or consulted a bit more. We've mentioned the flyover. We've got Abington Bridge, which Nestrans previously had a budget contribution towards. I did request that the board that was held in reserve until we were in a position through Aberdeenshire Council to fund that infrastructure, which we are in our list of bridge priorities. Again, that opens up all the rural area to the west of the A90 into the Mearns. And of course, as soon as you hit Stonehaven, you split down to the coast, which again is a huge area for active travel. We've got coast and path work underway now, and there's all sorts of activity down there, which I think is maybe been missing if it mentions the Lawrence Kirk corridor. So just a wee bit of a parochial hat there, which I'm sure you're aware of, but being a new group, opportunities there. Thank you, Chair.
Anticipated points well made. Thank you very much, Councillor Cullen.
Don.
Yeah, thanks very much. And thank you, Paul, for recognising the points that I brought up at the last meeting regarding the areas south of Stonehaven. While I recognise everything that was said at that meeting and what you've already said today, I wonder whether we can kind of turn this around a little bit, because we always tend to start city end and work our way out. We never go from the end points and work our way back in. And those are the points that really, really have a need, because you've got limited number of trains stopping Lawrence Kirk for getting into the city or even going south. That obviously you can't use your bus pass if you're under 22 or over 60. You're not getting that free travel, which people that have bus services can use. And Lawrence Kirk has very poor bus services, very, very poor. There's some during the week, but none of the weekends. So, you know, a really parochial example, I was asking people from Lawrence Kirk to come up and help me at the flea market in St Haven on a Saturday. Some people could not come because there's no public transport and they don't drive. So, you know, those kinds of things really do affect those communities. Yes, there's a less of a population, so the impact might not be perceived as great on a spreadsheet, but for the lives of those people, it can have a huge impact, and not just Lawrence Kirk, but also those small villages along that corridor, like Drumlessy, Brockenblay, all those places just off of it, Furden, right on the A90, and our bus not. You know, all these places could really, really benefit from more. Yes, we now do have the Ember bus, which they are all finding is absolutely fantastic, and it's being used greatly. But as I was speaking with you earlier, it's not great for people potentially crossing the dual carriageway to get on and off of buses. So, you know, the potential for perhaps underpasses. Woden does have an underpass, but other places do not, if it was to stop anywhere else. So, you know, all these things need to be considered, because once you get to Stonehaven, you've got so many options. But down that corridor to Lawrence Kirk, which is stated it is the Lawrence Kirk corridor, the options are not there for people, and that's what we need to be thinking about.
And I think we will, as I said, one of the recommendations is trying to perhaps capture that aspect of looking at those different options and how we can sort of package those up, take them into the right direction. Some of those might be Transport Scotland trunk road issues. Some of those might be commercial bus decisions. Some of those decisions might be, you know, the approach for the councils, the local transport authorities. Some of those might be ScotRail. I think we've probably got to capture those and then find the right place to take those one forward. And I think actually until you've captured that, then we make a start.
And also thinking about the active travel side of things. I mean, obviously, we've looked at between Muckles, Newton Hill and Stonehaven, very, very awkward, very bad geography for trying to put active travel in, and all the land ownership issues. But then Stonehaven down to Lawrence Kirk as well. You know, what could be done to make it easier for people through those small villages on active travel routes as well. Because yes, we do have the rural roads, but then you're sharing space with cars on 60-mile-an-hour rural roads.
Just realised we're moving south to north in terms of wards in this part. So Miranda's next.
I'd like to thank you guys for coming along to Cove Council. It was really beneficial to have that conversation. And while I understand the difficulties that this may have grown up with regards to art, I do think there's a real case for it to be moving the Cove Station forward. I'm really glad to see that it will continue to be progressed despite the cost benefit issues. I think we've got a real opportunity through the potential energy transition zone, the workforce that could potentially relocate up there, to make Cove Station really successful. In addition to art, I think they offer different things and different opportunities for both sides of Cove. So really happy to see the work that's been undertaken so far, and looking forward to seeing it progress in the future. Not really a question mark comment.
People have drawn comparisons with DICE
in
terms of the energy transition that has previously occurred and the reopening of DICE stations in the 1980s. So there is an opportunity there, but we've got to work at it. There's still work to be done. And I think what the lesson is that we've got to tease that difference of travel markets out more than we have done to date as well. So looked at, perhaps we looked at the big easy stuff, and I think the conversations that we've had indicate we now got to take that down and continue those conversations at the more detailed stage with people affecting their lives.
Yeah, I guess for my constituents in Cove, there is a real limitation with the existing bus services, and they're not reliable, they don't turn up. We have a lot of cancellations, and anything that we can do, whether that be art or the railway station, to improve that connectivity, because they are part of the city, but they sometimes feel a bit on the hinterlands because they don't have that connectivity. There's a high car reliance because it's just not reliable enough. So anything we can do to improve that.
No, I think that's just
Taking Colin then.
Just typically, so all you're saying that the work on the A92 active travel route is still going to continue despite its high cost at the moment. They're still doing more investigation into that.
We want to achieve a reliable, attractive link between linking up those two communities. The work we've done to date, putting it precisely alongside the A92 has come out as quite high cost. We want to explore whether again there's other alternatives that we could look at in that area. The Regional Active Travel Network had an alternative route. We want to explore that one and to see what the feasibility issues of that, and whether we would actually be able to deliver that to standard as well, which is also important.
I was just wondering because it's 33.6. I thought it read like it alternative that would still be.
And I think we said we would prioritise, because we've got the work in hand, the stuff that's going down onto from there, and then the next phase is to continue to work at that link down to Stonehaven and beyond, obviously, as well. But there it's not dropped. We continue. very much clearly want to find a solution in that particular area.
Very north end of the corridor, Sandra.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, when we were putting together the case for the Couture station, what was the kind of cost benefit ratio? Can you remember? Oh,
It was in the region of about 3, I think.
Was it as high
It's
as
between
that?
2 to 3.
Yeah.
As I recall, that's 2.5 in the middle of those two numbers. It was 2ish, depending on what assumptions you made. And I think if you took a low growth assumption, it's 1.8. So I think it went that one as well. Obviously, that was delivered at the same time as they were doing the track dueling between Aberdeen and Inverurie. So you got that benefit of that additional services as well. So there were a number of factors that were playing.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, it was just to give me a comparison.
Yeah. I think I get coming back south again, just based on what you said earlier about going north with them by the ward, so coming back south to Stonehaven. No, mine is, I'm looking at the recommendations in 5, and I'm thinking of the previous item where we asked, for something to come back to the board at appropriate time. I'm just wondering, obviously requesting Paul you go away, Aberdeenshire Council, etc. It's just this timeline. Would you try and bring it back at the same time as we got an art update, or would you come back?
I mean, I probably want to bring this back in November, was in my mind, such that we've then got the consultation feedback from the 2 councils, and then we could capture that, and then we can capture the feedback, the work that we've done prior to that date as well to update members. It's just the case of then the only counter to that argument is to see where the OBC and the artwork is. And I guess I think we'll just have to see at that point whether it's November or whether it's February to make that right call. So we've got the information that we need to have that decision.
No, I was just curious. I was thinking about February, so that's fine.
Put it in for November, and if it goes to February, we can take it from there. But so that'd be where we're.
See, so apologies, I've not got access to Teams on my things. So I'm having to check on other folks' laptops. I'm not seeing any other hands online, no, or in person. I'll be happy to agree this report. Great. Thank you very much. People in place, so 5.3 people in place program update. Just a start with a quick note, just welcoming the funding that's gone to a lot of local member community groups. I know quite a few members of the board made a point of sharing that with communities across the region, and my thanks to them as well for sharing that and to all the groups that applied. And I'll hand over to Caroline just for a quick comment.
Here, and yet it's just a very brief report to update members on the progress that has been made since the last time we met about the People in Place programme. And the main point of focus, as Chair noted, has been the awarded funding through the Community Fund. And we believe we've achieved a good distribution of projects across Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire, and a good balance between path-based projects, some adapted cycling projects, and also more generally just those core active travel initiatives. There are 3 recommendations for the board, and these focus around noting the progress that has been made on the 24-25 People Place project, and the evaluation report for that will be forthcoming, to note the allocation of funds in the Community Fund project, and also to note the onboarding that has taken place in respect of the 25-26 People Place program. Any questions?
Do we have any questions on this report? I've not seen any hands, anything on Teams. No, and in that case, I'll be happy to give you the report in front of us. Great. Thank you very much. 6.1, the matters update, and again, I just got a short introduction from Claudia here.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report provides the board with updates on rail matters across the northeast, with particular focus on accessibility improvements at Stonehaven railway station. The proposal to investigate the full scope of installing a second ticket vending machine follows continued discussions with ScotRail, who are in principle supportive of the proposed location, but have indicated that due to shifting customer behavior away from ticket vending machines, they are unable to fund the installation. As a result, Nestrans would be being asked to cover the full cost of the unit and installation. Despite the broader trend towards digital ticketing, there remains a strong case for a digital ticket vending machine at Stonehaven to support older adults, those with limited mobility, or passengers without access to digital platforms. The report also reflects on the recent Future of North East Rail event hosted by the Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce, which officers attended and found to be a valuable and well-attended session with good participation and insight sharing among stakeholders. And the board is asked to note the update of the recent North East Rail stakeholder meeting and also authorize officers to enter into further conversations with ScotRail to determine the full scope and cost of installation of a second ticket vending machine at Stonehaven Station and to report back to the board with options for the next steps following those discussions.
Thank you. I see Dawn's got her hand up already.
Yeah, it'd be no surprise that I went straight in there. I was reading this report and I was very happy, and I was reading down. I was thinking, this is saying all the right things. This is fantastic. And then I got to the end. It said that ScotRail weren't willing necessarily to fund putting a ticket machine in. I mean, the report outlines perfectly why we should be considering putting something in and why ScotRail should actually be considering putting something in. I don't know whether there's any room for manoeuvre in joint funding for it, or what can be negotiated, Paul. And yes, parochially, Stonehaven is my local station, but at the same time, I would be saying the same regardless of what station it was. When you have those accessibility issues where one platform that only has steps up to it, or you have to go round a 10-15 minute walk if you're less mobily able to get round there by road, and it isn't manned, or the conductor is up on the platform helping somebody else, so you can't buy a ticket. It's really important that those people that don't have the Trainline apps or the ScotRail app, or like to use a mobile phone to buy their tickets, have the ability to buy a ticket to get on the train. It's just really important. So I do think, and I would hope that the board would agree with me, that it's really important that we're providing these the ticket machines, or ScotRail is providing the ticket machines so that the train stations are fully accessible. We wouldn't accept at a new station that would be the situation. So why are we accepting that one of our oldest stations in the northeast that it's not a good thing to retrofit, and that's just been the situation for however many years?
Yeah, I mean, I'd also reflect that Stonehaven is now our second busiest station, I think, in the northeast. It's overtaking Dice recently, but these things change over.
I can enlighten you a little bit on that one. It's because a lot of people from the north, rather than going to Aberdeen to get on a train, will drive round the AWPR and park at Stonehaven and get the train there, because one, it's cheaper, the parking is free. So a lot of people do that. Yeah.
I'll quickly add in a quick comment on what Dawn said as well. I actually used an app. I used, it was the LNER app to book a ticket from Stonehaven to Edinburgh not long ago, and I nearly got caught out because it wasn't an online code. I had to go to the ticket machine for collection.
Yes.
So that meant under the platform to the ticket machine, and then back down to where I started. I just missed the train because I picked that up on my app that I had to go collect it. So I'd certainly benefit from this if we could move it forward. I see Miranda's got her hand up, so I think Helen.
Very happy to support a second TDM. However, what scope is there to push ScotRail to install it? What, can we go back to them and challenge them on it? Because it doesn't seem right that we are working out for something that makes such a lot of sense from the paper that's in front of us. I don't know if you have any scope to go back and push.
I think we have absolute scope. And I guess to a certain extent, I wanted this paper just to understand the board's view on this at all. And I guess ScotRail are now publicly owned, so there is also a Transport Scotland aspect to this. And that actually through this, they're actually making a very efficient and effective way of addressing an accessibility problem, which doesn't involve millions of pounds worth of lifts. So it's actually quite an elegant solution to championing accessibility. So yes, I think there is a case to be made, and it is relatively affordable in the scheme of things as well. But yes, I think there's a discussion and negotiation. It probably won't rest with ScotRail. It probably go up to Transport Scotland, I think, in terms of that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to make the very point, ScotRail, the People's Railway, and that people can't get access to it. I think there is an issue around digital divide, and I think your other point about the alternatives that you would have to make it accessible as a good point, well made as well. So absolutely in favour of pushing both ScotRail on this, but depending on what the cost comes back. But let's hope it's not going to be more than the 20,000 that is outlined in the report. But because that does, you know, even in itself seems quite a large sum of money for doing it. But I don't know the reason why that is. But yeah, very supportive to do as suggested.
Sorry, yeah, like you're totally supportive of it. The only concern perhaps I have is when they review their opening hours, etc., when the actual ticket office is manned, it may have a knock-on effect longer term. That's all. Totally supportive getting additional machine and everything. Just realising what may actually happen down the road, having seen how they've made other changes with Scotland.
The rest, I suppose.
Seeing any other hands, are we happy to agree? Are we happy to agree with what the recommendations and to try to nudge Scotland to want to be spending a bit more money in the North East? Thank you very much. 3 more items. 7 is progress report. I'm hoping to take that as read and just go straight to questions. And I see Paul this after.
Yeah. On page 237, there's a couple of things that A92 Marker North is it's been delayed. I've mentioned this a while back that we've got 270k in that versus to spend it this year. We're likely to spend it in this year if it's being delayed further on. And the RAG says yellow, when I think that it should be red because it's been delayed. So there's like it's not going as far as possible. And the same with Maywell cycle route. Again, it's saying that the budget is the new quote exceeds the budget, but we've got to agree arrow up on that. I just don't see that that's the right of the board. And again, with these persons have said, I still don't know what the specific budget is for these. I don't know what the dates, the original dates for completion, and where we are with these items of that. It's a statement about the report. That's all. There's nothing. Tell me if they're behind schedule, ahead of schedule, behind budget, ahead of budget.
Yeah, so I did just try and seek some clarity from the team on that. So there's been a bit of a resource implication in terms of commencing the works. That we commenced that detailed design around about August and July, August, summertime, and I think there's still some confidence that that can be completed by the end of the year. They are.
So our spend of 270.
Well, they are forecasting that won't all be required. There probably will be some spend, but it's not able to see that.
Do we have any other questions or not? If you're online, you've got things. Sorry. Apologies. I'm not seeing anyone online, not seeing anyone on hand. We're happy to agree that report. Thank you. 8 is publications and consultations. Again, I'm going to take that as read and just go straight to questions if anyone has any. In that case, I'm going to ask if everyone's agreed on the report.
Yes.
And finally, press and communications update. Again, to take that as read. And Miranda.
Yeah, I was a wee bit dismayed to just see the headlines of some of the items that came out of the Net Zero Committee, specifically around the Den Burn Restoration Project. I just want to be clear that the project has been paused. We're looking for additional funding. The headlines were very misleading with regards to that. They read the report and didn't actually read our amendment, which was agreed. It's the agreed position of the council. So it will be coming back to a report in August around how we fund it in the future, and we are positive we will find a funding mechanism for that. The headlines didn't quite capture.
Sometimes happens, doesn't it?
All the time.
You usually do.
I'd make that clear.
Do you have any more questions or anyone else wanting to add anything in from the side of the Brits? In that case, are we happy to agree that item? Thank you very much for your attendance today, and thank you to Aberdeenshire Council for hosting us at Martin House in Ellen today, and for the tour on as well.
And thank you for lunch. Much appreciated.
This isn't chocolate biscuits.
Well,
In your hand.
right.
Get that. I'm not working. That's our apologies.
These are the urbanization. Regional stuff.